So let's begin tonight in the greatest culture sphere ever brought into being by the human imagination, that of Polynesia. Tens of thousands of islands flung like jewels upon a southern sea. And I was very fortunate some years ago to be invited to sail on the Hokule'a, named after the sacred star of Hawaii, a recreated sacred canoe or catamaran based on the drawings in the journals of Joseph Banks, who of course sailed as a naturalist with Captain Cook on the epic journeys of the late 18th century. And the Hokulea has emerged as a symbol of hope and redemption for all the peoples of Hawaii, and indeed for all of Polynesia. And even today, the sailors of the Polynesian Voyaging Society can distinguish as many as 250 stars in the night sky. They can sense the presence of distant islands beyond the visible horizon simply by watching the reverberation of waves across the hull of the vessel, knowing full well that every island group in the Pacific has its own unique refractive pattern that can be read with the same perspicacity with which a forensic scientist would read a fingerprint. These are sailors who, in the darkness of the hull of the vessel, can distinguish as many as 5 different sea swells moving through the canoe at any one point in time, distinguishing those caused by local weather patterns and disturbances from the deep currents that pulsate across the ocean and can be followed with the same ease with which a terrestrial explorer would follow a river to the sea. Indeed, if you took all of the genius that allowed us to put a man on the moon and applied it to an understanding of the ocean, what you would get is Polynesia. But the most extraordinary thing about this tradition of wayfinding, of navigation, was that it was all based on dead reckoning. Now, dead reckoning means that you only know where you are by remembering precisely how you got there. And it was the impossibility of using dead reckoning on multi-week oceanic voyages that kept European sailors hugging the shores of continents for fear of the open ocean until the British solved the problem of longitude with the invention of the chronometer. But we know for a scientific fact that 10 centuries before Christ, the ancestors of the Polynesians from an ancient civilization called Lapita, off the shores of New Caledonia and New Guinea, set sail into the rising sun. In 1,000 years, they reached Samoa and Tonga, and then the diaspora stopped for about a millennium. And then they sailed on 4,000 kilometers across the central Pacific through the Marquesas, the Cook Islands, Society Islands, to the Marquesas, and then back up to Hawaii, southeast to Rapa Nui or Easter Island, and eventually around the time of the First Crusade, back to what is now known as New Zealand, all based on the visionary realm of the wayfinder. And indeed, when my friend Nainoa Thompson decided to, and the marvelous thing about this tradition is that the idea was that the ship itself never moved. It was the axis mundi of the world, and it was the imagination of the wayfinder who pulled the islands out of the sea. And so as Nainoa Thompson decided to embark on this epic journey with the goal of pulling Rapa Nui out of the sea, the Polynesian Voyaging Society, young men and women who not 5 years before had never been on the open ocean, set sail from Oahu for Easter Island, a journey of over 6,000 miles, traversing the doldrums, tacking to the wind for 2,500 miles, all to reach an islet less than 25 kilometers across, less than a degree on a compass had a compass been on board, but there were no compasses on board. There were only the visionary realm of the Polynesian wayfinders and the hopes and dreams of a people being reborn because they sailed.